This is the story of a 17-year-old girl who disappeared under suspicious circumstances in the most picturesque city in the United States. For 2 decades, she was unsuccessfully searched for by the FBI, police, and even her own mother. Amy Bilig was born on January 9, 1957 on the outskirts of Miami, Florida. This place leaves no one indifferent. The scorching sun, palm trees, and boundless ocean create an impression of a beautiful, carefree life. Admiring the landscapes of Miami makes you forget about lurking danger. On March 5, 1974, 17-year-old Amy returned from school. She planned to have lunch and then go for a walk with friends. The girl called her father and asked him for money for pocket expenses. He was at his office that day, so Amy had to go to him to get the money. She intended to hitchhike and reach her father's location. For Amy Bilig, this decision became fatal as she never arrived at her destination. When Amy's parents didn't see their daughter return home, they decided to report her disappearance to the police. The search for the girl began immediately. The police tried to determine the route she intended to take to reach her destination, but their efforts led nowhere. No clues were found. The girl vanished without a trace. Sometime after Amy's disappearance, 2 boys came forward claiming that they had kidnapped her. They demanded $30,000 for her release. The police arrested these young men, who turned out to be 16-year-old brothers Charles and Larry Glasser. However, it was revealed that they had nothing to do with Amy's abduction. They simply wanted to profit from exploiting another family's grief. But regardless, the brothers were still prosecuted, this time for extortion. After their daughter's kidnapping, Susan Bilig started receiving strange phone calls. A man on the other end claimed that he had Amy with him now, and that she was his slave. The unknown man told horrifying details that frightened Susan greatly. The police tried to trace the calls, but the man was clever and used payphones. Another lead in this already mysterious case led nowhere. Meanwhile, Amy's camera was found on a Florida highway. However, all the photos were ruined or damaged and did not help in the search. While the police were still looking for any other evidence, Susan couldn't sit still and just wait. She decided to conduct her own investigation and find her daughter. Almost 2 weeks after the abduction, the woman received promising information. She was told that the girl could have been taken by members of a biker gang called Outlaws. These people were engaged in rolling across the country and leading an illegal lifestyle. Susan found out that several bikers had passed through Coconut Grove on that day. The woman turned to her longtime acquaintance, who had once represented the interests of the gang in court hearings. He managed to arrange a meeting with a couple of bikers. Both claimed they were not involved in the disappearance and knew nothing about it at all. However, the meeting was not without results. The men revealed that in the past, bikers had already kidnapped girls and sold them into slavery. They also added that such cases occurred regularly within their circle. The abducted girl could be exchanged for a motorcycle, someone else's credit card, and other valuables. The gang members who met with Susan promised to try to find out about Amy, but they never contacted her again. Perhaps they were afraid that problems might arise from their meeting with Susan, or maybe they simply didn't want to have any further contact with her. Either way, this lead regarding Amy came to nothing. Later, Susan managed to meet with a woman who had been held captive by bikers before. She was kidnapped at 12 years old and only managed to escape when she was 17. After talking with this former captive, Susan became even more convinced that the gang could indeed have kidnapped her daughter. But apart from being certain about this, the meeting with this woman did not provide anything else. 3 months had passed since Amy disappeared. Her mother never stopped searching for her even for a minute. She found out that currently bikers are located in Orlando, 250 kilometers away from Coconut Grove. The woman went there hoping to find information about her daughter. She walked the streets and visited shops, questioning people, and finally, she got lucky. A cashier at a 24-hour store recognized Amy from a photo. He said he had seen the girl accompanied by 2 men. The cashier also mentioned that she only bought vegetarian soup. For Susan, this information was crucial as Amy was a vegetarian. Could it be that she had finally found a lead? Despite this important information, the search once again hit a dead end. She couldn't track down the bikers. More than a year passed when Susan received any information about her daughter. On January 9, 1976, Someone named Dave contacted her after seeing Amy's photo in the newspaper. He said he knew Amy because she lived with him for a short time. Susan and Dave met at his house. Dave was noticeably nervous when talking about the girl. According to him, he bought Amy from another person in a biker gang, and she lived in his house for some time. But later, Dave sold the girl to someone else. To prove the truth of his words, he mentioned a scar on Amy's body that was not mentioned anywhere else. Dave said he might know who could have the girl now and would try to contact that person. The man called only 2 weeks later. He said he knew where Amy is now. According to him, the girl is currently in Tulsa, Oklahoma City. Susan and Dave agreed to meet there at one of the local bars where they were supposed to bring the captive girl, but everything went wrong according to plan. While they were already there at the bar, a fight broke out and Dave got injured. Susan was taken out of the establishment and put into a taxi. She never saw that man again. Later on, Dave contacted Susan's lawyer and informed them that the girl may be in Seattle now. In 1977, Amy's mother had a heart attack and could only go searching for her daughter a couple of months later. There she visited all motorcycle shops, bars, and tattoo parlors. Several people recognized Amy from photos. They described her as quiet and silent, but this information did not help find her. 2 years later, an unknown man called Susan and claimed that her daughter is near Reno City, Nevada at truck parking lot needing help. The woman reported this information to FBI, but no traces of Amy Bilig were found at that parking lot. Detectives only established that bikers were there for some time, but it was unknown if the girl was with them. Since then, no new information has been found to help locate the girl. All attempts to find Amy Bilig failed. But in 1992, Susan contacted private investigators who managed to identify a man who offered to sell them the girl. However, he later disappeared from detectives' sight. In December 1977, a former member of a biker gang named Paul Branch allegedly confessed to killing Amy Bilig on his deathbed. According to him, he and other gang members kidnapped the girl and disposed of her a few hours later. But this whole story seemed very suspicious since Amy was seen in different cities, and only Branch's wife heard the confession. Susan believed that she made it all up just for personal gain. All this time, for 20 years, Susan received incessant night calls from an unknown man who said horrifying things about Amy, and only in 1995 was he able to be traced. The man made a serious mistake. This time he called not from a payphone, as usual, but from his personal cell phone. The FBI quickly identified the telephone terrorist. It turned out to be Henry Blair, who worked in the U.S. Customs Department. Blair was arrested, of course, but he denied any involvement in Amy Bilig's disappearance. He claimed that his mental disorder and alcohol were forcing him to call the girl's mother. His words were not very convincing. Nevertheless, the police failed to establish a direct connection between Blair and Amy. But there was enough circumstantial evidence. In Amy's camera there was a photo of a white van. Blair had exactly the same car. Also, in her personal diary the girl wrote that she communicated with someone named Hank who promised that they would go together to South America, while at the same time Blair went there for work purposes. And finally, the suspect's nickname was Hank. But despite these strange coincidences, the police could not find direct evidence of Blair's guilt. As a result, the only thing that could be charged against him by court was years of nightly calls to Susan Bilig. He was sentenced to 2 years for this crime. In conclusion, the police had only 2 versions of what happened to Amy. Both had weighty but only indirect evidence supporting them. Moreover, the FBI still considered Blair as their main suspect. It is terrifying to imagine what this girl went through if she was kidnapped by a biker gang. For many years she would have been transported from city to city, like an object passed on from one man to another. Or maybe Paul Branch told the truth, and Amy is no longer alive, but perhaps Henry Blair is guilty. Then an equally terrible fate awaited the girl. It is impossible to know for sure where this man could have kept her. And while he is in prison, it is possible that somewhere Amy is dying of hunger and thirst. But all these are just theories. The circumstances of Amy Bilig's abduction and subsequent fate have still not been established. We can only hope that the time will come when the truth comes to light. For Amy's parents, whether or not the police solved this case no longer matters. Despite Susan's colossal efforts, she will never find out what happened to her daughter. In 2005, Susan Bilig passed away at the age of 80. Amy's father died from cancer in 1992. We can only believe that Susan's work will not be in vain and will ultimately help in solving this disappearance.